Welcome back. The impeachment push. Public hearings are over, but lawmakers are not finished, of course. Sources telling Fox News potential articles of impeachment could include abuse of power, bribery, contempt of Congress, obstruction of justice. But voters not so convinced. A new Emerson poll shows support for impeachment is waning, with 43% of voters now supporting it, down from 48% last month. Independent voters only supported 34%, opposed to 39% last month. Joining me right now is former Connecticut Senator, United Against Nuclear Iran Chairman, and former Democratic Vice Presidential candidate Joe Lieberman. Senator, it's always a pleasure.
Mine, thanks
so much for joining us. Let me get your reaction to the hearings this week and the last 2 weeks, these public hearings, and where you think this impeachment situation is going.
Yeah, so, you know, I view this from a unique perspective because as a member of the Senate in 1998, 1999, I went through the impeachment of President Clinton, and we held a trial in the Senate in which he was acquitted. So it seems pretty obvious that the House, particularly after the testimony they got in the last couple of weeks, will impeach President Trump. It will be, unfortunately, but almost totally a partisan vote. I was about to say, but probably exactly what the framers thought when they put the impeachment clause in. And then, by any rational prediction, barring some shocking new revelation, the Senate will acquit President Trump. They will not convict him. I do want to say, with regard to those numbers you put up, that public opinion matters here. And, you know, during the Clinton impeachment, I went back and spent a lot of time looking at the constitutional history. The founders intended impeachment to be used very rarely because the election, the power of people in our democracy to choose their leaders, was to be the ultimate test of authority, and you'd only want Congress intervening in between elections when basically they felt that a president was no longer fit to lead the country. Yeah. So it's a high standard. This is only the fourth time in our history, but public opinion matters in that way. So
practically speaking, Senator, if President Trump gets impeached in the House and then he's acquitted in the Senate, what does that mean? He goes on and he continues being the president and then has an election next year?
Absolutely. That's exactly what happens. It's up to the public, the citizenry, to decide whether anything that came out during the impeachment process affects their vote. But really, in a way, that's the way the founders of our country intended it, that ultimately this is all about elections.
It's incredible what vitriol is out there, by the way. It is. We had another debate this week, and former President Obama speaking to donors in California this week, saying that Democrats need to, quote, chill out, unquote, about the 2020 field and should instead focus on beating President Trump. Obama making several comments about the state of the Democratic Party, warning the party about moving too far to the left. We've spoken about this in the past. Why has this party moved so far to the left?
Well, I mean, the good news here is that President Obama said what he did. You know, a lot of people saw him as a liberal Democrat, probably is a liberal Democrat, but he's more of a center-left Democrat, a kind of reformer than what I might call some of the revolutionaries who are running in the Democratic primary and really would change a lot of our system. I thought it was fascinating that President Obama said, why would our party or some of the candidates want to take away from people who don't have much the little they have? And I assumed he's talking about health care.
Yeah, Medicare for all.
Medicare for all.
Eliminating 180 million people's health insurance.
That they got from their employer. So why is this happening? I don't know. Listen, this is part of the problem of politics in both parties in our country. The right and the Republican Party, the left and the Democratic Party, has disproportionate influence because they're fired up and they come out. The center-right, center-left Republicans and Democrats and independents have the power. In my opinion, they're a majority to elect somebody who will actually work with the other party for the good of our country, like Clinton and Gingrich did together, and Reagan and Tip O'Neill. I mean, that's not so long ago that happened.
It's hard to look at this and think that anything gets done with the hatred between the two. I got to get to Israel. I want to ask you about China as well, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu indicted on corruption charges yesterday. This amid an already deadlocked political system. Your reaction?
Well, it's serious. I know Prime Minister Netanyahu for a long time, since he was the second in charge of the Israeli embassy in Washington in the early 80s. But he's a fighter, so he'll fight on. I mean, the immediate question is what happens within his political party called Likud. Will there be a move to remove him as the leader of the party and therefore as a candidate for prime minister in the elections that will now happen sometime next year? I think he's probably strong enough to resist that. So it's going to be a time of tumult in Israeli politics, budgets frozen, etc. But one thing it won't affect, because there's still a consistency across all parties there, is their work on national security, stopping Iran from, and their proxies from attacking, remaining, keeping the country secure.
No, Iran wants to wipe Israel off the map. We've heard that umpteen times.
Yeah.
There were protests in Iran. Officials there easing up on the stifling internet access, as Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is asking the Iranians to send the U.S. videos, quote, documenting the regime's crackdown on protesters. So Mike Pompeo basically saying, we are watching you and we want to see these videos. What do you think? Where's that going?
I think Secretary Pompeo and the Trump administration have been really superb on Iran. The breaking out of the bad nuclear agreement by the administration, the imposing of tough economic sanctions on Iran, is exactly why there's so much unrest in Iran. There's always been unrest there because the people feel suppressed. They don't have economic opportunities. They don't have freedom. I believe, from sources I have, that a lot of people who are protesting in the streets, just asking for lower gas prices, were actually killed by the government in Iran over the last week. So I think we've got to keep the economic pressure on. I hope that the Europeans will join America in the maximum pressure economic campaign, and eventually the mullahs who run Iran are going to have to decide either to come back and sign a better nuclear agreement, or they're going to face an uprising from the people that will push them out of power.
Real quick reaction from you on China. President Xi Jinping overnight speaking to a small group. Apparently it was a dozen people or so, and that includes former U.S. government officials. Hank Paulson and Gary Cohn were in the room when Xi Jinping said the following: "We want to work for a phase one agreement on the basis of mutual respect and equality, but when necessary, we will fight back. We have been working actively to try not to have a trade war. We did not initiate this trade war, and this is not something we want." Responding to some questions, is this the right way to approach China with the tariffs, or is there something more? How do you see things?
Yeah, so I was encouraged by President Xi's response. All those American leaders are over there for an economic forum. So I thought that was good, because President Xi wants an agreement. He doesn't want an economic war with the U.S. He doesn't want a military conflict with the U.S. I don't really believe President Trump does either. President Trump, I think, is going after the tariffs to try to balance our relationship. It's not good for the American economy either.
But aren't there national security risks when you look at, Huawei and their equipment and the back doors going back to the Chinese government?
Yeah, so there are real worries within our intelligence community about that. If the Chinese telecom companies want to do business in the United States, they really have to find a way to assure us that when we buy their products, we're not essentially buying ourselves into dependence on them, which will eventually compromise our security. We can do that if they cooperate.
Okay.
So this should be a win-win. I believe we're actually going to work this out. And tariffs are going to go down a little bit. And we're going to continue to negotiate, because it's not in the interest of President Xi, President Trump, China, or the U.S. for this to blow up into a real trade war.
That's a great point. Great to get your insight, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Joe Lieberman there.